What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Loop It In, the DoorLoop podcast, where we pick the brains of experts in property management, real estate, and investing. Tech, we cover it. Marketing, that too. So whether you want actionable tips or the insider scoop from top performers in their industries, this is one show you won't want to miss. Be sure to subscribe so you won't miss out on any future episode.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Loop It In. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Neil Merrin, who I met through a mutual friend, Daniel Sahayek, actually a few months ago. Neil is just one of those guys that you could speak to for hours on end, as he is simply full of life, full of fun stories, wisdom, and life advice. He has done literally everything you can imagine in the world of real estate, from being a property manager, pressure cleaning floors, becoming a realtor, broker, starting his own firm, raising money, starting a fund, and literally everything in between. And today, he is the founder and chairman of NAI Global in West Palm Beach, Florida, which is a property management company that manages over 7 million square feet of office and retail space, where he buys, leases, and also sells commercial real estate investments. So, Neil, thank you so much again for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, David. It's real joy to be in front of you and all your listeners.
Awesome. Thank you. So, Neil, give everyone a bit more information about yourself, your background, and stuff like that.
Wow. It goes back a longer way than I'd like to admit. I actually was thinking today, it's 40 years ago in August that I started this company that I'm in. I moved to Florida in 1976. And I think I was the youngest person in all of Palm Beach County at the age of 22. Interesting, funny story on that is a boss recruited me. I was making $160 a week in New York working for Gillette Razor Blade Company. And I'd been down here at spring break. I used to go to Fort Lauderdale and Elbow Room and Boom Booms on the beach. And so I said, well, that's really cool. So spring break, before I graduated, I made up resumes and left them with various real estate companies because I wanted to be in real estate. It's another story. And so the guy calls me in in July of 1976, and he says, listen, my property manager, she's pregnant. She has to take time off, and I'll pay you $175 a week. I said, I'll start tomorrow. I said, no, you have to come in August. I'm like, all right, well, I can wait. It's because I was a 10% pay raise. It was huge. $15 a week. Think about it. And August came, I borrowed my mother's station wagon. I packed everything I owned in it, and I drove down, and I got to Palm Beach County, and all I saw were oil tankers, storage for FP&L, and I started crying, saying, what did I do? So I went to Worth Avenue because it was the only place I knew about in Palm Beach, and it was closed. Literally. They had an agreement that if one store closed, they all closed in August. So everybody boarded up in August and left town. And I'm like, oh my God. So 2 nights later, my new boss invites me out after work to a drink at a Fern bar with TGI Fridays. And it was on the water in West Palm Beach. And we go there and it's like 50, 60 people. And we're walking around and he goes, this is everybody under the age of 40 who lives in Palm Beach County. And I'm like,
this is back in the day.
It was like, they called this area God's waiting room because everybody came here to die, not to live. And fast forward 50 years later, and it's like totally the opposite. I mean, everybody's coming here to live, right? So it's a real cool turn of events.
Well, you had quite a story that, we spoke offline, and you were telling me that, you started in property management, managing like 10 units in West Palm Beach. You were knocking on doors to collect rent. You were doing everything. You were sweeping parking lots, power washing. I mean,
it was 1976, and, everything was small time. So the guy I worked for managed 10 units here, 5 units there. I think one was as many as 21 units. And that was the size of apartment buildings. And yes, I had to sweep the parking lots. I had to collect the coins out of the laundry machines. Well, I was supposed to do that. I'll get back to that in a second. I actually remember there was a unit that was it was maybe 8 units, and it was built in the 1920s, and it had wooden floors, and people crapped it up. So I undertook it on my own on a weekend to sand the floors and stain them, hoping to get ahead. I mean, I'm just like busting everything I can. So one day I decide that I'm going to do my boss a favor, and I'm going to save him the trouble of counting all the coins from the laundry machines. So I go to an office supply store called Halsey Griffith, and I buy those funnels that put dimes, pennies.
Oh,
and
I mean, I used to have that.
Yeah, and you wrap it, and then take it to the bank. So I did, and I put it all on his desk with the deposit slips laid out. And the next morning, he calls me in his office, says, "What the fuck are you doing?" I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I count the money, you don't." I tendered my resignation by the end of that week because he was stealing the money. That's what he was doing. And he stole more than that. He stole a lot. He ended up doing federal time, like 4 years later. But I said, I'm out of here. And in the meantime, I've been going to night school to get a real estate license. There were 4 people in my class. That's how big it was. And in order to get a real estate license in Florida, then as a salesperson, you had to take the course like you do now, a few less hours, and then they give the test twice a year, once in Tallahassee and once in Miami atop the Holiday Inn at the Miami airport. So I had to wait. I had to wait till like October came around. I was done with the course in like May. I had to wait till October to take the exam. Pencil, no calculators. You had to bring a pencil and show all your worksheets and everything. I passed, and I got a job with a lady named Sally B. Usen, who was a condo salesperson on the beach in Palm Beach. But she wasn't in Palm Beach. She was in Lake Worth. And she operated out of 3 hotel rooms of a 9-room hotel that had been abandoned by the beach. And a bank had the other end of the unit. They turned it to a drive-through. And then she had 3 offices. They're really cool. Each office had 3 desks and a shower in it. And I went there and I'm sitting around, I'm like twiddling thumbs, and they're all these old housewives. And they had what was called uptime. So every week we'd get mimeograph sheets of the listings, and you put them in a book, and you wait for people to call you on them, and then you try and sell them. It was kind of like Glengarry Glen Ross.
Wow. Always be closing.
ABC. And so I said, well, when do I get uptime? And she said, after you make some sales. I said, I don't make sales without uptime. She goes, I don't know. So they were open Monday through Friday. It was regular business. So after about 3 weeks, I said, Sally, do you mind if I open the office on Saturday or Sunday? She goes, well, I'll give you the keys, but nobody's going to be here. I said, that's fine. I'll answer the phones and I'll, do it all. And she said, okay. And so that week I went to a local sign maker, and I had to make a sandwich board sign. And I put it out on A1A. Real estate office open. And for the next 4 weeks, people would stop and they go, where's Worth Avenue? Where are we in Palm Beach? And nothing happened. But, I closed the office after 4 or 5 hours. I go swimming on the beach. I take a shower. I go home. And it was, kind of like cheap living. And then one day, a South African couple walked in. And by the end of the day, on a Saturday, off the sign, and by the end of the day, they bought the most expensive condominium in all Palm Beach County, $100,000.
Oh, wow, $100,000.
Yeah, right? I mean, it was like, it was the first, 6-figure sale that the office had ever made. And with that, my broker came to me and said, listen, you can't work Saturdays anymore. The other women want it. I said, well, you have to give me 2 weekdays. And that went on for about a year, and I ended up working my way out of there and getting my own brokerage license. And I actually opened up my own office then. So that was like by 78, I opened up my own office. Not the one I'm in now, but a different iteration.
You were quite the hustler. I mean, I love these stories. And then so you open your own office, but then it's my understanding that you got out of the market because everyone was becoming a realtor. Is that right? And then you went into commercial real estate?
Yeah. So what happened was I was doing really well with the condo sales. I had a great gig. I was the only young single guy selling condominiums. So, I would, I'd be pitching women, housewives, whose husbands and them owned a condominium. And I would say, listen, if you have a daughter or granddaughter, she's down here for the holidays, I'm happy to, take her out. And so I'd get listings that way, and I'd get a lot of action. Some of it good, some of it really bad, but it was really amazing. But the more condos I sold, the more housewives moved here, and the more of them had nothing to do with their husbands were playing golf, and they all got real estate licenses. And I realized that my whole inventory was drying up. So I kind of sold myself out of the business, and I said, I got to do something different. And I went into commercial, and it was an interesting time. But I was very lucky. After about a year of trying different commercial venues, I hooked up with a guy who referred me a client that turned into a gorilla. It was AT&T, the phone company. And they were going through divestiture. It was 1979. And the Justice Department said that they had a breakup. They were a monopoly. They were broken into Verizon and Bell South and different things. So they all had to duplicate their facilities. And I ended up doing like 2 million feet of leasing for them in 3 or 4 years. I was like the hottest young broker in the country. It was phenomenal. That was a stroke of luck.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So let me ask you, for everyone listening, and I mean, you have done everything in this industry from A to Z. If you can go back and do it all again, what would you have done differently? Yeah, I'll go with that question.
What would I have done differently? Not a lot, looking back on the opportunities that I had, because I was in a nascent market that was growing. There were some minor trips and falls, but I'm still standing and the other people aren't, that I competed with. There are things I'd like to do more of. I think that's a better question. Ground up real estate development, which I got involved in from 95 to 2005, was incredibly lucrative. It really gave me the basis for, buying my first big house and putting my kids through college and buying a nice car. And, that was really, from just making the brokerage fees to actually having an equity position was a phenomenal position to be in. And to do it on that level was magnificent. I actually had dinner with there was a client who backed me in the venture. And he's about 12 years older than me, and we hadn't seen each other in 20 years. And we had dinner Saturday night at his place in Bureau. And, I had to thank him for allowing me to make literally a couple of $1 million with him. And this is, at a time when a couple of $1 million was worth a lot. And he said, believe me,
Still worth a lot.
Because I made like $5 million off of, 5 years worth of work. He made 37 million. So, I didn't realize how happy he was with 37 million.
So let me rephrase the question again. So for people listening in, what piece of advice would you give them? What direction should they go in? Should they be a realtor, a property manager, commercial, start their own fund? Where do they grow?
So interestingly, I did a bunch of business through AT&T representation with a guy who ran Trammell Crow of Orlando, and this was in 79, 80, 81. And he told me the program at Trammell Crow back then was, everybody wanted to be a partner, right? But the way it worked is you had to be a leasing agent for at least 2 years. You had to wear out your shoe leather, knocking on doors and procuring tenants for them. And then if you found a project, you would bring it to the partners who controlled the region, and they would do the first phase and you'd be the leasing agent on it. But the second phase, you get a little piece of equity, and that would go on until by 3 or 4 years, you could be a full partner and you'd have your own territory. So it made me realize the value of understanding your market, and your market in all of these, in all commercial real estate, is your tenant. That's the market. My license plate is actually 10ANTS, tenants. And the reason for that is that people stop going, "You an exterminator?" I said, "No, I'm a commercial real estate." Is that the dollar starts and stops with the guy who pays you the rent. Unless you understand that, and unless you understand their business and what they do and what their needs are, you're just going to be second guessing and stumbling along. So you can say, "Oh, I'm very facile with numbers. I can do mortgages and this and that and everything," but you're never going to get into a true ownership, entrepreneurial understanding of the business without being able to relate to the tenant.
Yeah, totally agree. And let me ask you, if you can go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be in your 20s?
I would have stayed closer to the tenants that I serviced, so that they didn't lose them to somebody else, right? Because in those days there was just so much business, and there was nobody to compete with. So I had to go on and service the next tenant, and I didn't didn't keep track of my past tenants. So I think that servicing the business that you've already done better was what I would have given, the advice I would have given myself.
What does that mean, servicing? Just building better relationships with them?
Right. Checking in on them after the deal, checking in on them 3 years later, checking in, having relationships with these people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about relationships. Yep. Still today. Nothing has changed too much over the years. That's good to know.
Except we meet like this rather than in person.
Yeah. And except the number one most expensive house in Palm Beach isn't $100,000 today anymore.
No.
No.
It's got a lot more zeros.
Probably 100 million. Yeah.
I think there's a $251 million house listing in Palm Beach now, Tarpon Island. Yeah, $251 million.
Gosh, that's absurd. That's absurd. Let's see what it goes for. So right now, it's my understanding that you currently manage over 7 million square feet of commercial space. Is that correct?
That's probably about right. We range between 6.5 and 7.5 million annually because properties go in and out of the portfolio. But yes, most of it, the bulk of it's office, Class A office product, but we do some industrial and some retail also. No multifamily, but that's just our choice. It's not an area we excelled in, so we let other people do that.
Got it. So I mean, that's incredibly impressive. So how did you get there, and how can others achieve the same thing?
1 square foot at a time. No, it actually is a building process, and I probably have 35 different clients. Probably 80%, 70% of the portfolio is vested with 3 or 4 huge owners that we just do really good work for, and they trust us. Those relationships came from being active in the industry, not just, this is the thing maybe I could tell your listeners, is my success comes not just from doing my job every day, but being involved in my industry, speaking at conferences, asking other people to speak, organizing events, attending events, networking, being available for people when they're not your customer, but they want information, give it to them, spend the time, show you're interested. It'll all come back to you.
Okay, awesome. And speaking of events, which kind of events specifically? Are we talking about like BNI networking events, CCIM?
So I am a CCIM, and I enjoy their events. I'm a SIOR, Site of Industrial Office Realtors. I really enjoy their events. BOMA. I've also participated, even though it's Commercial Real Estate Women in Crew, NAOP. Through the panoply of all the industry alphabet, is all a good playing field.
Got it. Okay. And I always love to hear the other side, the side that no one really shows off, which is the mistakes you've made in your career. So give us, 1 or 2 fun examples of the biggest mistakes you've made, and how others can prevent that from happening to them.
I don't know if there
were no mistakes.
I try and forget the mistakes, but I do remember things I did on purpose or intentionally that cost me money, but I did it for my own benefit. So one of the things I do is 27 years ago, I started taking off July and August. It was a very slow time in Florida. The heat was killer. Nobody would come and look at property, commercial. Nobody would come and look at property. Even before that, I would actually go to the breakers and rent a beach chair with a phone, with a cork on it, for like Thursday and Fridays, because there was like nothing to do. And my son went to camp in the Adirondack Mountains 27 years ago, and we went up for visiting day, and we took a 10-day vacation. We rented a hotel room, and about the 3rd day there, I'm driving through these pine forests, and it's like 72 degrees. I turned to my wife and go, "Why are we going home?" So we went home after the 10 days were up, and the next in October, when the leaves were changing, we went back up there to bed and breakfast, and she said, "What are you gonna do?" I said, "Well, I'm gonna look at the stream, and and then I said, and I'm gonna hire a realtor. And we're gonna look at houses to rent." And so I went, and the first house I rented for, now normally you rented for a week at a time. That's what you did. People rent. It's been going on since the 1920s, and well before VRBO or Airbnb. It was. So I rented this magnificent house. It was built in 1938. It had a glass window the size of a Mack truck overlooking a state park, and the leaves were all the colors of Trix box of all the colors. And I said, I'll take it. And we took it that summer. I'll never forget this. And about 2 weeks in, I went to the guy's paperback library and I pulled a book out and his card fell out. This place looked like it was out of a Ralph Lauren catalog. Canoes hanging from the ceiling, Navajo rugs. The guy he was the vice president of Tommy Hilfiger, because that's why it looked that way. So that started a tradition that for 27 years I would go away. So, I got really into it. I got a computer and I'd be online. And back then it was like AOL account, and I'd go on in the morning and for 30 minutes to get one email with all the phone calls, like 3 of them.
I remember that.
Right. And then in the evening, I get the same thing from my office. And then I'd use the portable phone, not the cell phone, the portable phone, sit out on the deck and call people. Say, sorry, I missed you. I was out all day showing property. And so one guy insisted that I come down to do a deal with him, and I couldn't. And I said, listen, I can't help you with it. And the fee was a whopping $100,000, a lot of money. And I walked from it. And people said to me, did you regret it? And I at first I said, yeah, I really kind of regret it and everything. But in the end, I think sticking by my gumption that, I'm on vacation, this is my time, and sorry, I'm going to give up $100,000. That maybe it was worth it. maybe not.
There's a lot of people that, there's actually a book, I forgot what it's called. It's a great book of people on their deathbed, and what's their biggest regret. And it's just not spending more time with family or prioritizing work and money over family. So clearly you prioritize family over money, which is a hard decision, but long term, I think you look back and you said that was the right decision to make.
Yeah, I think my kids, they're in their 30s now. They're finally starting to appreciate me.
just starting.
Right.
So, I mean, it sounds like you had it sounds like you were hustling a lot in the beginning, and then as you got more successful, you had more of a work-life balance. So I
did not have a work-life balance for the first 20 of, so I've been working 45 years. And for the first 25 years of it, I did not have a good work-life balance. I would be in my office at 6:30, 7 in the morning, and I would be here till 8 or 9 at night. Weekends, not so much, because commercial is not that busy on weekends, but 5-day weeks were long. I eventually learned that I couldn't control everything, and I had to stop being the total boss. And I took in partners and let them run things. And now I'm at the opposite end of the spectrum, where I have very senior people that do all the day-to-day decisions, all the corporate running. And basically I'm here as chairman. My job is to think about where we're going to be in a year, 3 years, or 5 years, not where we're going to be this week or next week. I don't make daily decisions. I just, I'm more of the strategic thinker. And let the other guys execute. And
but for those starting off that are one-person shows or even a two-person team, and they've got to roll their sleeves and do most of the hard work right now, is it needed to kill yourself 16-hour days, nights and weekends in order to become super successful?
I don't know, because I think technology has actually cut many hours out of the workday. I mean, and now it's getting amazing with GPT chat and stuff like that. I mean, chat GPT,
yeah.
Right. It's like, I would sit there writing letters to people that I would then give to a secretary to type up, and we'd lick the envelope and put stamps on it. And that was time consuming. Today I can come in and I have computerized data that spits it out in 3 minutes rather than me being on the phone for 4 or 5 hours. So I do think that technology is giving us much more leisure time than I had in the 80s and 90s. I don't think you have to work. I think you have to work as hard, but not as long, because the information gathering and the dissemination is now instantaneous. I mean, I remember we were thrilled when the fax machine came out, because you could get somebody a document within an hour. I mean, before that, the easiest you had was FedEx. It was overnight. Now it's like, I was communicating with you 3 seconds before we started recording this electronically. So
Yep. Now the world has changed, and the thing is, everyone has access to the same technology, so everyone can work faster. So some people still working very hard, but yeah.
Say that because we all have information. We all have access to not only the same technology, we have access to the information, which is a new phenomena of the 21st century. It used to be that the information we would keep it close to ourselves because we spent hours and days and weeks and months gathering it, and we'd make a presentation on it. And then there were groups like CoStar and LoopNet that started to agglomerate the information and make it available to you. And I was a very early adopter of CoStar. I said, look, I think we're better off if we all have the same information, because then it's not a matter of who works as hard, it's who's the smartest using it. And, I think I used that information very smartly for the first 15 years that it's been out. It's been about 15 years that information's been available. And I think that separates the brains from the brawn in the industry. Right.
Yeah. No, I mean, you gotta work hard and smart. So fast forward till today, I believe you told me that people kept asking you to invest their money into real estate. So you eventually started a fund in 2019. Is that right?
So interestingly enough, between 95 and 2005, we were doing a lot of brokerage business, but we were also involved in vertical development. So we were buying or building office buildings, and we did very well with it. We sold everything, my partners and I, at the end of 2005, early 2006. We actually were going to do a venture with a huge institution, but 2008 came and everything fell apart. And the world actually crashed in 2008, and it was real ugly. Everybody knows how ugly it was. In 2012, I started to sense opportunity, and I tried to do a couple of deals, but my former partners and the guys who had put up money behind me weren't interested. They just didn't get it yet. And those deals were profitable. 2013, a deal came along that I was the court-appointed receiver on a building on PGA Boulevard in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. Then I went to the building, and it was 22% leased. And I'm looking at the building, and it was really crappy old building, but they'd taken one floor and they'd done a great job. I said, this is beautiful. I said, if we did this the whole building, it would be magnificent. So I got a guy to be my partner for half of the investment and take 3 floors of the 10-story building on it as a tenant. And then I decided, you know what, this is such a good home run. I'm going to let all my friends who are in the brokerage business participate. So I went to really high scoring brokers. I said, look, give me $100,000 and invest it in the building, and you'll get, 2 times your money back. And everybody said, sure. One guy didn't have the money. I lent it to him, but he eventually paid it. And actually, we bought the building for $5.6 million. We put about $2 million in it, and we sold it in 2017 for $19.8 million. Everybody got 3.5 times their investment back.
Wow.
And at that point, everybody's going, oh, let's go do another one.
Word got out.
Yeah, let's do some more. And so there was a deal that the building that I built with the guy from Vero, and I sold it to JP Morgan. And JP Morgan decided to sell the building, and it was part of my management portfolio. That was a big chunk. And they put it on the market, and I think this was March of 2015 or something, and there was a bump in the CMBS market. And they originally thought they were going to get $58 or $59 million for the property based on the broker's opinion, and the bids all came in at like $50 million. So I built the building, I managed it for them. They called me every week, and they're lamenting to me, we're so disappointed. We only got $50 million. I'm on the phone. I go, $50 million? Oh, you got $50 million? I said, I'll buy it for $50 million. And with that, they said, you will? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I will. So I flew to New York. I made a deal with them. I wrote them a check for $1 million, which was every penny that I had liquid. And they gave me 48 hours for it to go hard, because the due diligence was all mine.
Wow, you were all in, all your eggs in that basket at that time.
It included my kids' trust funds, which came out of the first sale, because I created trust funds with that $5 million profit. My brother, who runs Cushman...
I hope there's a good ending to this story.
Great ending. My brother, who runs Cushman & Wakefield in New York, is the signatory on their trust. So I sent him the paperwork. So he goes, what's this? And I told him, he says, I want it. So we went in, and fast forward, I sold the building last year for $81 million. We bought it for $50.5 million. Sold it for $81 million. So I made it all over again. But
do your kids know that you were gambling their trust away?
yeah, they love it. They actually started with them in like car seats going past, and Daddy going, you guys own that. I said, no, you own that. So it's kind of funny. But then my brother's friends and my friends, and we had more and more. And so we started buying some other buildings, and it got to the point where I said to my brother, Andy, I can't take 50,000 from you, because normally he wants to give me 100. I said, because my fiance's dermatologist wants in, so I have to split it 25,000 a piece. And he goes, that sucks. And I was having to like cram people down, and that's when we got the idea to do a fund. And the fund, we just made out and tell everybody, listen, you're just going to commit so much money to us, and then when we find something to buy, we're going to ask for your share of it.
Capital calls.
Yeah, and that way you're not fighting for 5% or 10%. You're just going to get the same share of all the deal on it. And we did that as an experiment in 2019. We decided to raise $15 million, which meant about 30 investors. And we ended up with $17.5 million. We bought a shopping center and an office building, and then COVID hit. So in the middle of COVID, we bought bigger office buildings, and we closed that fund out with $350 million worth of assets in it.
Wow.
And we said, this is really cool. Let's do another fund. So a year ago, this March, we set out to do a $50 million fund. We raised $25 million, and we started buying properties. And by about this time, I started getting a sense that the market was going to change because of interest rates. And I stopped taking money because it was going to be too hard to place. And I was right. We finally made the next deal. We bought 3 buildings in Boca and West Palm Beach in April and May. And then we didn't buy a building until March of this year in Tampa, because it was just so impossible. And we probably won't buy another building for a good year. It's just the banks aren't lending. I mean, especially office buildings. The news in the rest of the country is that buildings are, dinosaurs, unless they're the newest ones on the block. They got to be converted to residential, and there's increasing vacancy and lack of use as people work from home. I'm lucky. I invest in Florida. Florida's a growth state. Even as companies shrink down their footprint here, there are new people behind them. The buildings I bought in Fund 2 a year ago have all had positive absorption in the year that I've owned them, like significant positive absorption. So it's, we're definitely counter-cyclical in Florida for that product.
Sounds like you have the Midas touch. So, I mean, it's an interesting story, because it seems like you were hungry, aggressive, hustling, but at the same time, you knew when to hit the brakes and be patient, like an 08, 09, let's kind of calm down for a little bit. And then when an opportunity that's too good to be true comes up, you go all in and you seize it. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, I think the advice I would give to anybody who's looking to do this is believe in yourself, and believe in what you're going to do, and show people, and put your mouth where your money is and your money where your mouth is. If you don't have money, give them everything else that you have. The first deal I did was the guy from Vero. I brokered some deals for him and made some money, and I saved $200,000. I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. So, I had expenses. And he came to me and said, you got an opportunity? I said, well, there's this deal on PGA. And I said, we need $2 million to buy the land. He says, how much have you got? I said, 200,000. And he said, well, okay, put that in, and I'll put in the rest. You'll be my 10% partner. I said, well, what about the building? He said, don't worry, I'll pay for that, which he did. I mean, he just wrote checks for it. And when we went to sell, I got 10% of the profit, and he got 90% of the profit. But he had to put in another 12 or $15 million in the deal,
right,
to my measly 200,000. But the reason he did it was he knew that I had every penny
right,
that I could spare in the deal. Right. So he knew he had.
Yeah, you're all in. Yeah, it reminds me of watching Shark Tank. They love seeing when people are all in, oh, I refinanced my house for this business. They love that. And to me, the 5 or 6 main keywords that stick out about you over time, it's, you weren't trying, well, maybe you're trying to get rich quick, but it takes time, obviously. And you built up your expertise, your reputation, people trusted you, and you had the network and connections to make it happen at the end of the day when the bigger deals came by. So it takes time.
I didn't start out to be, I started working and dreamt of being rich. But through my career, I basically wanted to be the best. The economic rewards came afterwards. I wanted to be the best broker. I wanted to run the best brokerage firm. I wanted to run the biggest brokerage firm, which I did for a while. I wanted to, I think I said this about 2 or 3 years ago. I always wanted to be relevant. In other words, I wanted people to call on me for information, to call on me for opinion, to have conversations like I'm having with you today. And I think that's an important way to go through life. And if you do that, then the opportunities to make, not the money will come, but the opportunities to make money will come. And if you recognize them, and you won't recognize all of them, you'll miss some. But Warren Buffett had a saying that business life is like a merry-go-round. And about every 10 times around, a little gold ring comes out. And if you grab it, you strike gold, right? And if you miss it, you got to wait 10 more times before it comes around again, if you make it to it. So, I've been lucky. I've grabbed the brass ring 4 or 5 times, and I'm real happy with that.
Yeah, I grabbed it once in March 2020 when the whole stock market crashed by 33%. I was like, oh, it's coming back up. In a year, and in 5 years, it's coming back up. And I went all in, and then 4 months later, it went to all-time highs. You never know, but yeah.
Yeah, and you look back and go, that was great. I don't think it'll happen again, but there'll be other opportunities like that. And you don't want to live every day waiting for the ring. You want to live it creating good opportunities, and when the ring comes, you just grab it.
Yeah, and I love Warren Buffett's quote on this. It's when others are fearful, you be greedy. When the market's crashing, everyone's scared and panicking. The news is saying the world is over. It's not over. In a few months or in a year, it's gonna bounce back. America especially always bounces back. History repeats itself. We don't learn our lessons. And every 10 years or so, it normally happens. 2000, 2009, 2020, literally on a dime every 10 years. So, yeah, you just got to wait for those opportunities.
For the markets that I play in commercial real estate, we have excessively high interest rates. We have the crash of regional banking system. And we have a potential national default fixed areas. That is compounded by nationally the downturn in value of office product, which may or may not be realistic in all the other cities, but it doesn't make sense here in Florida. But I'm going to take a deep breath and sit this out, and I'm figuring by January, February of next year, I can be back out buying again and making deals. And it's, I'll bide my time and manage properties in the meantime. And what I'm going to do in the meantime is take really ultra good care of the buildings that I own now, or that I manage, make sure their occupancy stays up, that their toilets flush and the air conditioning is run and the buildings don't leak and the tenants are happy.
So I want to take this last section of the conversation to a different direction that you probably weren't expecting, with the caveat that your kids are listening, or probably going to watch this after. So, when you're starting off and you're trying to make money, you're trying to build wealth, you obviously want to, build wealth for yourself, but also long term, when you have children, it changes your mentality. You want to start building wealth for your children, leave money in a trust fund, like you said, leave some money for them, make sure they're taken care of. So now that you've done that, do you think it's good to leave a trust fund for children? Do you see them acting any differently? Are they going to work less hard compared to what you had to do?
No. So first of all, I have an attitude that there's just so much I'm going to leave to my kids. And I have this conversation. I have one brother who's very successful and another who's not. And he has more kids than this, but, he is so successful that I counseled him. I said, you got to take my attitude. I'm going to leave the kids X amount max. I'm going to give hopefully a minimum of this, but above that amount, it's going to charity. Because I don't want to spoil the kids. I don't spoil the kids now because, they have access to the trust funds, but for school, my son is buying a new house next week. He was looking at $650,000 houses, and because he's about to have his third kid, and I said to him, "You can't buy for that. You have to spend 850, 900,000." I know. He looked at the first house at 650. Called me and said, "It's a piece of garbage." I said, "I told you."
Depends what area, but yeah.
Convinced me that I twisted his arm to spend $200,000 more for a house. I should pick up at least half of that. So, and you know what? I'm going to do it gladly because I can, and I can't take it with me. So, and it feels good because now I see that money that I'm setting aside for my children is going to their children. And hopefully, if it lasts, it'll go to their children's children. And, and if it doesn't, so I gave everybody a good start. My parents paid for me to go to college. That was their gift to me. And it was a great gift. They didn't give me much beyond that until my mom passed away. She did leave me an apartment in Palm Beach, which is really nice. It's just, I'm happy where I am. I'm happy for the kids. I actually wish that they had more now because they're both in their early 30s and it's time when they can really use money, but they have to work for it.
Yeah, for sure. So what you're saying is, you're always happy to help when it's, and most people have the same mentality. I do as well. Education, stay in school, we'll pay for that, obviously. And gigantic lifetime purchases like a house or a wedding or stuff like that, or like a children's big event and stuff like that.
Right. So it's interesting because that's about it. I paid for school. I gave them each a car when they graduated college, not high school, to be able to drive to and from work. And I've helped each of them buy a house, and I paid for both of their weddings. And I'm going to help with the next house, and I'm helping with school for their kids, and that feels good. And if I go broke doing it, it's worth it. Not that I'm going to, but so I won't have a private jet. My kids will have a good education. My grandchildren have a good education.
Exactly. And there's actually a great book that's called Die with Zero or Die with Nothing. I think it's Die with Zero. And, what it pretty much says is your kids will be fine. They'll be fine. But take care of yourself first. Obviously, make sure you never get to zero. But at the end of the day, people try to accumulate. And then they die and they have millions accumulated. And they're like, now what? I didn't enjoy it. I didn't do what I wanted to do. My kids needed it the most in their 20s and 30s. And I wasn't there to help them. Now, usually when you pass away, your kids are going to be 60s probably. They don't need it in their 60s.
I had an epiphany 2 years ago. I had a medical incident that I nearly died. And I turned around and I started counting. I said, you know what? Well, I don't have that much time left. I accumulated for 40 years. I mean, I was a saveaholic. I socked it away when I wasn't investing it. I didn't spend it, and all of a sudden I turned around in the last 2 years. I said, shit, I got to spend it before I die. And also I'm going to leave everybody too much money. I'm still in that role, but it's a good place to be. And
yeah. Well, what the book is saying also is you should be making an impact with that money today versus when you pass away, and then it goes to some charity or fund. Like, give it to the charity or fund today. Be more involved today when you can. And when you pass away, who knows what will happen. But at least so for now, you can control it. The biggest charity are my children. And after they get fully funded, I'll turn to others. And I have been gifting. I feel good about alma maters and others that have done well with what I've done for them. So. And for those that don't know, there's actually I don't know if you want to call it a loophole in the tax system, but it's called a step-up basis. So if you invest in stocks or real estate and you and your spouse both pass away, it goes to your heirs, like your children, at a step-up tax base at the current value of that stock or real estate. For example, if you bought something 50 years ago that was $1,000 and now it's worth $1 million, it goes to your kids as if they bought it yesterday for $1,000 the day you pass away. So that's a great tax loophole that people don't know about.
It's magnificent. You have to wait until a life-changing event or ending event to take advantage of it. I've I've tried to take advantage of transfers more that I can do now at a discounted value for lack of control kind of thing. So, when I set up my kids' trust, they didn't have control of it, and I was able to give them money at 50% valuation of what it really was, kind of thing.
Right.
So,
Right. Speak with your estate planning attorney. Yeah. There's some good things you can do for sure. I mean, 1031 exchanges, you could do that forever, basically.
as long as 1031, as long as 1031 laws, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right. So to wrap it up, any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
I think just be true to your heart and don't say things that you think people want to hear. Just tell people what you really think. And I've always stood by that. And, for years people would say, "Oh, I'm an opinionated son of a bitch and whatever." But 5-7 years later, they go, "Well, he was right. He stood by it." And that. So play the long game and say what you mean and mean what you say.
Yeah. I mean, I could just tell you from just this call, honesty, transparency, trust, reputation, that's everything to you, and it's everything in success. Also, no one's going to trust you or do business with you if they don't trust you. So that's awesome. And how can people get in contact with you or follow you online? Just, LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, I have a LinkedIn account. You can email me if you want at nmerin and Merrin at mhcreal.com. It's Michael Harry Charlie Real.com. And you can call my office, 561-471-8000. I have an Instagram page.
Are you accepting new investors? No more new investors.
Page, but it's actually linked to my daughter because I did it when she was in college. So that's not that active. And yes, I'm still accepting new investors. Probably, I think, till December of this year, and then the fund closes. It was a
Awesome.
2-year window.
Awesome. Well, congrats on your continued success.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, and hopefully we'll have you on another one coming up soon.
I appreciate it. And good luck to you, and thank you to all your listeners. Let's do it again.
Thank you so much again. And thank you for everyone for joining us with another Loop It In podcast. Please check us out at doorloop.com/podcast for more podcasts coming up soon. All right, that's it for today. Take care.
Thanks for listening all the way to the end. Don't forget to give us a good rating on whatever platform you're tuning in from, and we'll be back soon with another new episode. We hope to see you there, and until next time, this has been Loop It In.